Welcome back, Simple Truth. Hey, we're in the story of David. Last week, I challenged you without actually getting into chapter 17. Let me read a verse, at least maybe one today, right? And then we'll pull a simple truth out of it. Here we go. Chapter 17, verse 1, it says, "Now the Philistines gathered their armies for battle." You get, right? Like I could get stuck there, and I'm going to get stuck there. But so here it is, right? Do you know that God has enemies? You understand that this whole world that we live in is really this big cosmic battle, as L.A. Marzulli talks about, right? This big cosmic chessboard battle between God and the enemy. And you're just put on this board at a certain time to play a certain part in this humongous thing that's been going on since Adam and Eve were around, right? And so the Philistines, they're an enemy, but they're not just an enemy of the Israelites. They're an enemy of God. The enemy is using the enemy of God, right? The enemy is positioning his chessboard. He's putting the pieces where he wants them to be, constantly counteracting what God is doing in chat, because the enemy actually thinks he's going to win. And here's the truth. The enemy can win battles, but he has already lost the war. Like the end game. It's funny. My son and I were watching last night for a few minutes a Star Wars thing about Obi-Wan Kenobi, right? And it's go back in time, that middle time that you wonder why he's hiding on the planet, what was he doing, and all these things. And so Disney's come out and they were like, hey, let's answer some of those questions, right? And so you're watching this, and the whole time he's in these battles, right? And you're like, well, I know he doesn't die because he's in the later movies, right? So you're watching it with the surety he doesn't die, but you have to keep reminding yourself of that. You have to keep reminding yourself to how you know how it ends. I know exactly when he dies in the Star Wars movies, right? So he's not dying in these movies, right? He's not dying here. So, but in the battle, it feels like he is going to die. It feels like, oh no, how's he going to get out of this? You know what? You can watch for how he's going to get out of it, but you just know with surety he's going to get out of it, right? This is the whole deal. We go through battles, and we know who wins the war with surety. We know how it ends, right? But the battles feel like it's a life or death thing. It feels like it's the end of the world thing, right? So the enemy is lining up his armies against God, right? And they were gathered at Sokal, which belongs to Judah, and encamped between Sokal and Azekah in the Ephraim. Right? So they're sitting ready to go. Again, God's positioned his people. The enemy's positioned his people, and there's going to be a battle. Now, God already told the Israelites, here's how this is going to work. Be obedient. Do what I've asked you to do. Be about me, and I'm going to save you each and every time. I'm going to fight for you. I'm going to go before. So you don't even have to worry about the army lining up. Now, listen, let's just make this personally convicting at the moment. Ready? God says that same thing to me. Andy, they can line up as many voices as they want. They can line up as many people as they want. And if you're obedient to me and you shut your big mouth and you do it my way, not your way, right? I'm going to fight for you. I'm going to make it all work out. Doesn't mean that I'm not going to get dinged up in the battle. Doesn't mean I don't have to fight the battle. Lots of people think it's that way. Like the Lord will fight for you. No, the Lord uses you. He fights and he uses you as well. Right? There's not a battle besides Jericho, but even then, the Israelites had to go in after and do the cleanup work, right? They went in and attacked the city. God just took down the fortifications, the protection. God's not sitting around going, Andy, you sit in your lazy boy and I'll just make your life all perfectly peachy. Right? That's not what he does. When he says, Andy, you get up every day, get dressed for battle. Right? Get your sword ready, right? Put on all the armor of God. Get ready to go every single day. And if you're obedient to me and you're willing to listen to me and you're willing to be quiet, right? Be still and know that I'm God. I'm going to fight it for you. But it doesn't mean we're not going to have to work through things with people. It doesn't mean we're not going to have discussions. It doesn't mean that we're not going to have to withstand a barrage of enemy arrows, right? It doesn't mean that his catapults aren't going to be, shooting flaming rock at us and all these things, right? It just means God says, be still. Be still. And at the right time, I'll move you on my chessboard where I need you and how I need you, and you're going to be okay. Don't listen to these people that say God's just going to make everything rosy all the time. No, God, He's going to allow things to happen. You might be in the middle of a battle. You might be facing cancer. You might be facing COVID. You might be facing financial disaster. You might have to go through the death of people. You might have to, all kinds of things. You may have to. All God says is like, listen, I got you. I got you. Listen, whether you like it or not, and I like it or not, we're on God's chessboard. You got two choices. You either move yourself on God's chessboard, do the math on how dumb that sounds, or you let God move you on his chessboard. Your choice, right? But we're constantly playing this game with God. One minute we want to move, like F3, that's where I want to go, God. And God's like, no, I want you on G7, right? It's that kind of a thing. Are you going to let God move you to where he wants you? Position the pieces, and then are you going to be obedient? Let God protect you, let God take care of you. Or are you going to be like, no, God, I want to run away from this battle? Right? Man, it's a pawn against a king. How am I ever going to win that? Until you realize and remember that there's lots of times where pawns checkmate kings. It's an amazing thing. God can do that. The least, the greatest. God has the ability. He's already checkmated the enemy. He just wants you to be obedient. So he's lining up. That's what we see. God lining up his resources, the enemy lining up his resources today in your life. What are you going to do about it? How are you going to handle it? Hey, that sounds like a perfect place to stop. Simple truth. It seems a little simple. We'll talk to you next time for Samuel chapter 17. We might be in verse 2. We'll see.